A sign from the past. We had been friends since high school, me, Lekha and Volodka. We studied in the same class, then Volodka and I went to university and started working. But Lekha had a dream from childhood, which he realized by the time he was 25. He dreamed of being a truck driver. The wheel and the road beckoned him. After the 9th grade he went to study to be a mechanic, got his license and not immediately, but became a trucker. He traveled almost all over Russia, was not at home for weeks, and when he came, he told us about his road adventures and places where he had been. Leshka also had a girlfriend. Lenachka faithfully waited for him from trips and did not even hint at a wedding, which Lisha liked very much. And then disaster struck. In June 2001, Lisha was in a terrible accident. Of course, he was not traveling alone. His partner was an old wolf, Ivanik, who had eaten dog on the roads of our vast homeland. But that day, or rather evening, when Leshka was dozing on a bed in the cab and Ivanik was behind the wheel, it is unknown why, but their truck drove off into a ditch, overturned and caught fire. Fortunately, it happened almost at the entrance to the village, and at that evening hour there were still people on the streets who witnessed and rescued Lisha. Ivanik could not be saved. He burned in the cabin, and Leshka was thrown out through the windshield. The guy fell into a coma. The doctor told Lekha's mother that if he didn't regain consciousness in 3 days, it was impossible to hope for the best. The poor woman spent 2 nights on her knees, asking God to help her son, and on the 3rd day Leshka opened his eyes. His health was all right, a small concussion and scratches, but it turned out that Lisha had partially lost his memory. He didn't remember anything from his 17 years. But what was that compared to a years-long coma or death in general? He remembered who he was, his parents, us. He forgot his driving experience and a couple of friends he would have to learn, get acquainted, fall in love all over again. The doctor said that to restore his memory we should tell Lisha more about his life before the accident and show him photos and videos. That's what we did with Volodya. For hours we sat near our friend and enthusiastically talked about all sorts of funny and not so funny stories from his life. We brought photos to his room called Common Acquaintances, whom Lisha did not remember. He listened to us with great interest, looked at the photos, and 3 days later he asked, "Well, I understood about Lenachka, but where is Olga?" "What Olga?" We were surprised. "You know, the dark one with long hair and blue eyes?" Volodya and I looked at each other. "No doubt we don't know anyone like that." Leshka was silent. Then he told me. "While I was 2 days in a coma, I had a dream." No, it wasn't a dream. It was a memory. I was walking with a girl in the city. I'm 18, she's 17. And I love her. I love her a lot. It's just an overwhelming feeling of love for her. And we're eating ice cream and we're talking. And I want to kiss her so badly. But I'm afraid, even though I know and see that she wants it too. We agree to meet the next day, but Olga doesn't come. I'm worried that something might happen to her. I run to her house and the neighbor says, "They moved out." Well, what city is it? Volodyask. It's our town. I even remember the street where she lived. Or lives on. And the house and the entrance. We shrugged our shoulders. There were no Ols in our neighborhood. And if Lisha told us it was only about Lenachka, and he kept silent about Olga. With Lenachka, Lisha soon parted, saying that of course maybe he loved her before the accident, but unfortunately now he does not remember it. The girl was not so much upset and in 3 months jumped out of the marriage to her admirer.
And Lesha, coming out of the hospital, returned to the wheel, but at the persuasion of his mother, began to roll by cab. The road beckoned him, so he took any orders, you could say, was on call all 24 hours. Our communication gradually almost came to naught. He did not remember anything from our adult life, he did not remember common acquaintances. And some kind of longing settled in him. Maybe it was Olga. A year later, Lesha himself called me and invited me to his wedding. Of course, Volodka and I were happy for our friend. We had a good time. And when, almost a year later, we celebrated the birth of his little boy, he told me how he had met his Ira. I once took an order for a cafe. It was at night, about 3 o'clock. I got there. I see 3 girls. So they got in the car. I looked in the rearview mirror and marveled. The one in the middle looked like Olga from that dream or memory. I drove them around, and this girl, who looked like Olga, was the last to get out. I remembered the address and the entrance. I took a day off from work and the next day I stood outside her house all day. By evening she came out to throw out the garbage. Well, I immediately ran to get acquainted. Of course, it is funny to remember what nonsense I told her, but Ira agreed to meet me the next day. In about 3 months, when she introduced me to her parents, we were looking at their family photos. On one of them was a young grandmother Olya, the girl from my dream. Ira told me that when Grandma was 17, she and her family lived in our town. In 1935, her father was arrested by denunciation, and neighbors advised the family to go somewhere north, which they did one day. No one asked Olga, they went to their relatives and that was it. At that time Olga was dating and in love with her boyfriend Sergey, but this could not influence her mother's decision to leave. Then she married Ira's grandfather. In the 50s they moved back. I don't know how this can be, but then, in a coma, maybe the soul of that Sergey showed me how he felt about this Olga, how he loved her and how unhappy he was that she disappeared. Maybe I was supposed to fulfill his dream of living with his beloved. I don't know.